What if I told you that right now, the most powerful military alliance in history is on the brink of collapse? Not because of Russia, not because of China, but because of a dispute over an ice-covered island most people couldn't find on a map. This isn't a hypothetical. This is happening right now. President Donald Trump has just threatened 8 of America's closest allies with devastating tariffs unless they hand over Greenland. Thousands are protesting in the streets of Copenhagen and Nuuk. European troops are deploying to the Arctic. And NATO, the alliance that has kept peace for 75 years, might not survive. Welcome to the Greenland crisis. The story nobody saw coming, but everyone needs to understand. On Saturday, January 17, 2026, while thousands of Greenlanders marched through snow and ice protesting American threats, Donald Trump dropped a bombshell from his Florida home. 8 European countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland, would face a 10% tariff on all goods exported to the United States starting February 1st. And if they don't comply, those tariffs will skyrocket to 25% by June. The demand? Simple. Sell Greenland to the United States. Complete and total purchase. Trump's exact words on Truth Social: world peace is at stake. But here's what makes this absolutely unprecedented. Every single one of these countries is a NATO ally. These aren't adversaries. These are America's closest friends. Countries that have fought alongside the US in Afghanistan, Iraq, and every major conflict for decades. The reaction. The response was swift and furious. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer called it completely wrong. French President Emmanuel Macron labeled it unacceptable and vowed that Europe would respond in a coordinated manner. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said simply, "We will not let ourselves be blackmailed." Even within Trump's own Republican Party, senators are pushing back. Lisa Murkowski called the tariffs unnecessary, punitive, and a profound mistake. Senator Tom Tillis warned they would help adversaries like Putin and Xi who want to see NATO divided. But to understand why this crisis has exploded so dramatically, we need to answer one fundamental question. Look at a map. Not your typical Mercator projection, an actual azimuthal map from the North Pole perspective. Suddenly, Greenland's importance becomes crystal clear. This isn't just about ice and snow. This is about 3 critical factors that make Greenland one of the most strategic locations on Earth. Factor 1. Military dominance. Greenland sits at the crossroads of 3 continents. It controls the Geopolitical Gap, the maritime corridor between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom. This is the only route Russian submarines can take to reach the Atlantic Ocean. For 75 years, NATO has monitored this choke point to track Russian naval movements. The US already operates Patuxent Space Base in northwestern Greenland, America's northernmost military installation. It's a crucial component of missile defense systems, providing early warning of ballistic missile launches from Russia. The shortest route for a Russian missile to hit the US mainland? Straight over Greenland. Trump has repeatedly mentioned the Golden Dome, his planned advanced missile defense system. According to his administration, controlling Greenland is especially important for this defensive shield. Factor 2. The climate change game changer. As global temperatures rise, the Arctic ice is melting faster than anyone predicted. This is opening up 2 major shipping routes, the Northwest Passage and the Transpolar Sea Route. These routes could cut shipping times between Asia and Europe by thousands of miles, saving massive amounts of time and fuel. Control the Arctic. Control the future of global trade. Factor 3. The mineral gold mine. Here's where it gets really interesting. Greenland sits on some of the world's largest untapped reserves of rare earth elements. The minerals essential for smartphones, electric vehicles, wind turbines, and military equipment. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Greenland has 25 of the 34 minerals deemed critical raw materials by the European Commission. We're talking about massive rare earth deposits, uranium reserves, though mining is currently banned, copper, nickel, titanium, graphite, and potentially massive oil and gas reserves. Right now, China controls about 90% of the global rare earth supply. Greenland could break that monopoly. For the US, that's a national security imperative. But here's the twist. Extracting these resources would cost an estimated $1 trillion and take decades to yield returns. This isn't a quick win, so Trump's argument is clear. Greenland is vital for American security, but there's one massive problem with this plan. Greenland isn't empty land waiting to be claimed. It's home to 56,000 people, nearly 90% of whom are Inuit, indigenous people who have lived on this land for thousands of years, and they have made their position abundantly clear. Greenland is not for sale. The protests. Last Saturday, in one of the largest demonstrations Greenland has ever seen, thousands marched through Nuuk, the capital city. That's roughly a quarter of the entire city's population taking to the streets in freezing rain. They carried signs reading, "Greenland is not for sale, and we are not interested in being Americans." Many wore red baseball caps that parodied Trump's MAGA hats, but with a different message: "Make America go away." The protests weren't just in Greenland. In Copenhagen, an estimated 20,000 people rallied outside the U.S. Embassy. Demonstrators in Aarhus, Aalborg, and Odense joined in solidarity. Even in Canada's Inuit-governed territory of Nunavut, people marched in support. One protester in Nuuk told reporters, "This is our home. This is not a toy." The polling data. The numbers are devastating for Trump's ambitions. According to recent polls, 85% of Greenlanders oppose joining the United States. Only 6% support it. Even in the U.S., only 17% of Americans approve of Trump's efforts to acquire Greenland. The historical context. This isn't the first time America has tried to buy Greenland. The U.S. has attempted this repeatedly. 1867, Secretary of State William Seward floated the idea after purchasing Alaska. 1910, a complex three-way trade proposal involving the Philippines. 1946, President Truman secretly offered $100 million in gold bars. 2019, Trump's first-term attempt dismissed as absurd by Denmark. Every single time, Denmark said no. Every single time, Greenlanders said no. Greenland achieved self-rule in 2009. The law establishing this explicitly states that the decision to pursue independence rests with the Greenlandic people alone. No one else gets to decide their future, not Denmark, and certainly not the United States. But Trump isn't backing down. And that's where this crisis takes a dangerous turn. Let's talk about what's really at stake here. The potential collapse of NATO. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was formed in 1949 with one core principle: an attack on one member is considered an attack on all. This is Article 5, the collective defense guarantee that has prevented major wars in Europe for 75 years. It was invoked exactly once, on September 12, 2001, when NATO allies came to America's defense after 9/11. European troops fought and died in Afghanistan alongside Americans for 20 years. Now, the United States is threatening military action against a NATO ally. The unprecedented crisis. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen put it bluntly: if the United States chooses to attack another NATO country militarily, then everything stops, including our NATO. Think about what that means. The U.S., NATO's most powerful member, the country that spends more on defense than all other allies combined, threatening to use force against another member state. There is no precedent for this. Article 5 has no mechanism to deal with aggression from within the alliance itself. The European response. In an extraordinary show of solidarity, multiple European nations have deployed troops to Greenland this week. Germany sent Bundeswehr forces. France deployed air, sea, and land components. Sweden, Norway, Finland, the Netherlands, and the UK all sent personnel officially. These are training exercises to operate in Arctic conditions. But everyone knows what's really happening. Europe is sending a message. They will defend Greenland if necessary. French President Macron stated, "No intimidation or threat will influence us, neither in Ukraine, nor in Greenland, nor anywhere else in the world." Who benefits from this chaos? Here's the geopolitical reality that should terrify everyone. Russia and China are watching this unfold with absolute delight. Russia's embassy in Belgium issued a statement noting the disagreements that have emerged within the bloc over the Greenland issue and calling NATO's ability to reach agreements increasingly unpredictable. For Putin, this is a dream scenario. NATO, the defensive alliance that has contained Russian expansion for decades, is fracturing from within. The U.S. is threatening Denmark while Russia wages war in Ukraine. Senator Tom Tillis warned, "This kind of rhetoric further helps adversaries like Putin and Xi who want to see NATO divided." Transition. So where does this leave us? What happens next? Here's the reality. Trump cannot legally invade Greenland without congressional approval, and Congress has shown little appetite for this adventure. The Supreme Court is currently reviewing Trump's authority to impose tariffs using emergency powers. If they rule against him, his main leverage disappears, but the damage is already done. The economic impact. These tariffs would hit recently finalized trade deals with the European Union and the United Kingdom. The EU has called an emergency meeting to discuss coordinated retaliation. Some EU lawmakers are already calling to halt the US-EU trade agreement entirely. American businesses that rely on European imports are already sounding alarms. These tariffs won't just hurt Europe, they'll increase costs for American consumers and companies. The diplomatic fallout. A bipartisan congressional delegation traveled to Copenhagen this week, led by Senators Chris Coons, Tom Tillis, and Lisa Murkowski. Their message to Danish and Greenlandic officials was clear. Many in Congress do not support forced acquisition. Senator Coons told reporters, "There are no pressing security threats to Greenland. Greenland is part of Denmark. Denmark is our NATO ally. That should be the end of this discussion." But the Trump administration isn't budging. When Danish and Greenlandic officials met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, they left saying they didn't manage to change the American position. What could actually work? Here's the irony: the U.S. already has what it needs in Greenland. Through the 1951 Defense Agreement and NATO partnership, America has military base access at Patuxent Space Base, rights to establish new bases if needed, cooperation on Arctic security, partnership on mineral development. Instead of threatening allies, the U.S. could invest in Greenland's infrastructure through development finance, partner with Denmark and Greenland on sustainable mining projects, work with European allies to counter Chinese influence in the Arctic, strengthen NATO's Arctic presence through cooperation, not coercion. This approach wouldn't give Trump the deal he wants for his legacy, but it would actually advance American interests without destroying decades of alliances. So here we are. 8 NATO allies facing economic punishment for refusing to sell territory that isn't America's to buy. Thousands protesting in the streets, European troops deploying to defend against potential American aggression, and the world's most successful military alliance teetering on the edge. This isn't just about Greenland. This is about whether international law matters, whether alliances mean anything, whether might makes right in the 21st century. The Greenlanders have spoken clearly. They want to determine their own future. Denmark has stood firm. Greenland is not for sale. America's European allies have united. They will not be blackmailed. And now the world waits to see what happens on February 1st, when those tariffs are scheduled to begin. The bigger picture. History will remember this moment, not as a bold move to secure American interests, but as the time when the United States turned on its closest friends, when economic coercion replaced diplomatic partnership, when 75 years of transatlantic unity was put at risk over an island whose people simply want to be left alone. As one Danish protester's sign read, "Denmark is small, but we fight with what we have." Sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important message. Respect sovereignty, honor alliances, and remember that true strength comes not from force, but from partnership. The Greenland crisis isn't over, it's just beginning, and how it ends will shape the world order for decades to come. Call to action. What do you think? Should the U.S. pursue Greenland? Are the tariffs justified? Or is this the biggest diplomatic disaster of our time? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to stay informed about how this crisis unfolds, hit that subscribe button, because trust me, this story is far from over. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.